Dry Tortugas National Park is a remote national park off the west coast of the Florida Keys. Come join us as we celebrate our 25th anniversary by camping overnight for several days and enjoying its beautiful beaches, sunrises, sunsets, and stargazing, touring historic Fort Jefferson, and snorkeling among coral reefs and marine life in the clearest blue waters. This is Magellan.
And this is Greyhound,
where we make videos about epic road trips, kayaking, hiking, and other outdoor adventures. So we spent 3 days at Dry Tortugas for our 25th anniversary, and Greyhound had no idea for almost a year. We had been to Dry Tortugas before, 6 years ago in fact, on a day trip. While the day trip is amazing, you only get a little over 4 hours in the park when you factor in the 2.5-hour ferry ride each way. We found out afterwards that you can camp up to 3 nights with a permit. And while we generally don't like to revisit places more than once, there are exceptions. It was time for an exception. Whether you just visit for a day or want to camp overnight, you need to book a reservation for the Yankee Freedom, the only authorized ferry that will take you from Key West to Fort Jefferson. You can also get there by seaplane or private boat, but these are not cheap. The reason I planned this a year in advance wasn't because of my natural tendency to overplan. It's because there are only a handful of camping spots, and they're booked usually 9 to 12 months or more in advance. Even for day trips just involving the ferry, you should plan on booking at least several months out. You can bring your own kayaks on the ferry, or the ferry works with a local outfitter you can rent from. But again, book that well in advance too. The cost will vary depending on what group category you fit into, and includes a $15 entrance fee to the park that you can get refunded later if you have the Parks Pass. The $15 nightly camping fees are separate and are paid via cash in a drop box on the island. Make sure to bring a pen. Whether you're taking a ferry, private boat, or seaplane, you'll be leaving from Key West. Key West is an international airport, thankfully, so you don't have to drive 3+ hours from Miami. We wound up flying from New York and spent the night in a hotel. The hotels are not cheap and are usually booked too, so be sure to reserve those in advance as well. While you're in the area, check out the southernmost point in the US, eat some Cuban food, key lime pie, and drink beer. The ferry leaves at 8 a.m., and if you're camping, you'll need to load up well beforehand. Since the camping is primitive, you need to bring everything, including your own fresh water. When you book your reservation, there'll be a link to show you everything you're allowed to bring. The rules are quite restrictive, including no camp stove fuel, pack, and container types. Because we were flying in and also had to contend with luggage restrictions, we picked up some collapsible water jugs and totes, and wheeled luggage carriers so we could walk all of the stuff from our hotel to the ferry. There is a private luggage storage service in the same building as the ferry. Had we known about this before, we would have packed way differently. Make sure to get your boarding pass and your smiley stamp for the complimentary snorkel gear. After you load up, there's one last chance for local caffeine nearby while the day trippers check in. She likes her caffeine in the morning.
Yes, I do.
There's a parking garage right by the ferry for those driving or not in walking distance of their hotel. At about 7:30 a.m., we all boarded the ferry, opting instead for the outside air than the air-conditioned cabin. Forecast for the next 3 days, 85 degrees and sunny. Let's go celebrate! Goodbye, Key West. We'll see you in a few days, and we'll definitely need a shower. The ferry does have a freshwater rinse once docked, as well as bathrooms, and a galley with food and drinks for purchase. Both day trippers and campers receive a breakfast snack and packed lunch. We suggest campers save their lunch for the last day since you only get one, although you can always buy them too if there's any left. The roughly 2-hour ride is mostly uneventful until you get to Garden Key, the island where Fort Jefferson is located. Garden Key is one of 7 keys in Dry Tortugas National Park and is the second largest. And while Garden Key, Bush Key, and Loggerhead Key make up 93% of the total land in the park itself is 99% water. The remainder of land belongs to the Long, Hospital, Middle, and East Keys. The Southwest, Bird, North, and Northeast Keys used to exist in the park, but they disappeared over 100 years ago. Before you land at Fort Jefferson, you can see Loggerhead Key in the distance with the Dry Tortugas lighthouse. You can visit with a permit if you have a boat or a kayak. And here is the historic Fort Jefferson, our tropical getaway. See that area with the trees? That's our campground. After docking, the day trippers got off, and the campers, us, waited for the crew to unload our camping gear while a park ranger briefed us. Besides keeping your food and trash animal-proofed, the ranger's most important directions were how to handle any migrants that land in boats. We didn't take this seriously at first, but the beach was lined with boats that had recently arrived, and there were actually 3 landings during our stay, complete with helicopters, searchlights, the works. We then took our gear in an amazingly helpful wheelbarrow and headed to our campsite, which are first come, first served basis.
I think this is a good one right here because it's in the shade.
We proceeded to set up our home for the next few days, with a pretty good view, I might add, within walking distance of the beach. There's a picnic table and a grill, and a post to hang your garbage. You can drop off garbage bags daily when the ferry docks, as long as you use the garbage bags they provide. Pretty much pack in, pack out principles in place here. Which brings us to the bathrooms. While docked, all visitors must use the bathrooms on the ferry. There are composting toilets, but these are only available to campers after the ferry is gone. Another camping note. Like most remote places, there's no cell reception or access to electricity, so plan ahead. We brought a battery block to charge our devices on, but there are a few outlets on the ferry that you can use during the day. After working up a sweat from the heat, we decided to go swimming at South Swim Beach, right behind our campground. This is probably the best beach here. Clear blue water and a great view of Fort Jefferson. It's a great place to lay on the beach and relax. Greyhound even took her floaty into the water one morning while sipping on her tea.
Oh, thank God I have tea.
She got a few envious looks, and several people told her they wish they had thought to bring one.
We're gonna do some frisbee.
I don't think she's ever thrown a frisbee in her life. As you can imagine, this is not the only place you can swim. For one, you can swim around the moat of Fort Jefferson if you like, which would bring you to North Swim Beach, located near the North Coaling Dock ruins. There's also a beach just south of the North Coaling Dock ruins right near Bush Key. Bush Key connects to Garden Key by a sandbar and is also a nice beach to walk. Just pay attention to where these signs begin because there's no swimming allowed in Bush Key. There's also no swimming on the dinghy beach where the boats dock, the seaplane beach where the seaplanes land, or inside the moats. Honestly, who would want to swim in those gross moats? Because of an architectural error, back when this island was used as a prison, the moats once filled up with human sewage. Besides, we saw a shark in one of them at sunset one evening. If you're into beachcombing, there's plenty to check out.
See, this is super cool looking. You cannot take this back with you because it's a national park site, but take pictures, leave footprints, that's it.
You can bring your own, but Yankee Freedom offers complimentary snorkel gear, and campers get to keep theirs overnight the entire time they're camping. Going snorkeling. Yeah, baby, we're going snorkeling. Yeah. We're gonna go snorkeling. Yeah. Obviously, I was excited. I think I snorkeled 5 or 6 times every day. The 3 suggested snorkel areas are the South Coaling Dock ruins near the ferry pier, around the moat of Fort Jefferson, and the North Coaling Dock ruins. We thought the North Coaling Dock ruins to be the best for this reason. Just absolutely incredible. It was a little bit unnerving to have hundreds or thousands of fish circling, but it was an unforgettable experience. There were all these little fish too. Anyone know what kinds of fish these are? Let us know in the comments. Going along the moat walls was cool too. It was really interesting to see the coral with the fish and the walls. I was also happy to see that there was finally water warm enough for Greyhound to want to get in without a thick wetsuit. Speaking of the moat, walking the moat is definitely the most popular and unique thing to do here. You'll get some amazing views of historic Fort Jefferson with a beautiful ocean backdrop. Whether you start from South Swim Beach or North Swim Beach, you'll hit a dead end at some point. That is definitely broken. That's okay though, because you're on an island and going to the other side is not that far. This place is beautiful. This section's a little sketchy, but why not? Eventually you'll hit another spot where I highly suggest not trying to jump across. You'll see the other spot where you had to turn around too. And now for a tour of Fort Jefferson. If you've taken the ferry as a day trip, a 45-minute guided tour will begin at 11 a.m. shortly after you arrive. Because we had been busy setting up camp and getting our briefing the first day, we decided to take the tour on our last day. The fort is named after President Thomas Jefferson and is the third largest fort in the United States to this day. It's also the largest brick structure in the Western Hemisphere with over 16 million bricks and 2,000 archways. Although not a single shot was ever fired from the fort, it was designed to protect the gateway to the Gulf of Mexico and had the ability to house 450 cannons. Construction began in 1846 and lasted for roughly 30 years, and was still never finished. It was also never attacked. That's a good thing. I mean, who'd want to attack this? In terms of keeping the peace, mission complete. During the Civil War, it became a prison, and after it was abandoned in the late 1800s, it served as a marine biology station into the 1930s. In 1935, Fort Jefferson was designated as a national monument by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And in 1992, along with the rest of the Dry Tortugas, became a national park. Among some of the notable things you should check out, the Garden Key Lighthouse, which was built in 1825 to help ships navigate the treacherous reefs in the area. The lighthouse on Loggerhead Key was built in 1858 for the same reason. Dry Tortugas is actually one of the largest concentration of shipwrecks in the world. As you walk on the ground level or the second level, these are casemates, which is where the cannons were placed. They've been replaced with beautiful views. These are the hatches to the cisterns, where fresh water was stored. The cisterns were necessary because there's no source of fresh water on the island, hence the name Dry Tortugas. The Tortugas part of the name, which means turtles in Spanish, came from Ponce de Leon, who discovered the sea turtle-covered islands in 1513. While an active fort, the military tried to capture fresh water by building a basin atop the fort to catch the annual 30 inches of rain and store it in cisterns with boilers. Problem? Salt water seeped into the cisterns, and the only source of safe drinking fresh water was what was stored under the parade ground. Another cool factoid. If you look at the bricks near the top, they're slightly redder than the ones below. This is because the fort was under Union control during the American Civil War, and the brick stopped being sourced from Florida. These are the ruins of the soldiers' barracks. And this is a powder magazine where they stored gunpowder to keep it dry. It was also never finished. This is a Rodman gun, which among others here were left because they were too heavy to move. They could shoot 3 miles away though. This is the visitor center, which has various exhibits and a bookstore as well. From this vantage point, you can see the beautiful Bush Key with Long Key just beyond it. Bush Key is closed from February to September for bird nesting and had thankfully been open when we went. While the tour is pretty cool, honestly, having the fort to ourselves and maybe 7 other campers was even better. This place is entirely different once the ferry leaves. Something you can't see at Dry Tortugas on a day trip is a sunrise, a sunset, or the stars. But camping, you'll definitely get this opportunity. Since we experienced 2 sunrises and 2 sunsets on our trip, we figured we'd show you a different location for each. For one of the sunrises, head up to the top of Fort Jefferson towards the lighthouse. Here you'll get gorgeous views of Bush Key and Long Key. Even while the handful of campers sleep, having this to ourselves just makes this even sweeter. Just kidding. It's just me. Greyhound's asleep. She does not do early for nothing and for no one. For another sunrise, head out onto Bush Key and towards the tip. Here you can get a closer and more intimate view of Long Key. For sunsets, which she was awake for, we highly suggest heading up to the top of the fort again. Just past this Rodman cannon, bring a blanket, find a comfortable spot, watch the grass sway in the wind, and enjoy. The views really are amazing up here. You get such a different view of everything. For our last one, we decided on a sunset picnic along the Moat. Aside from a shark swimming behind us, it was another pretty sunset.
Happy anniversary, love.
Make sure you stick around afterward and bring your stargazing maps. While we don't have good enough footage to show you our stargazing of the night sky, we can assure you that the skies were pristine, the stars were amazing, and the ocean waves punctuating the silence were superb. So about those sharks. There are definitely sharks here, and you'll see them primarily at the pier. You know what else you'll see? Jellyfish. Someone told us they saw barracudas too. But what will you see in massive abundance? Hermit crabs. They are absolutely everywhere. Near your tent, on your tent, and if you're not careful, in your tent. We spotted this fascinating lizard near our spot too. Anyone know what that is? Dry Tortugas is also known for its bird watching. There are 299 species here after all, and the best time is in the spring, especially April. We aren't bird watchers, but we definitely saw birds. Unfortunately for us, the logistics of driving our sea kayaks from New York, or even checking our inflatable kayak at the airport, was too much. But this is definitely something you can do. Had we known ahead of time, we would have rented kayaks from a Key West outfitter like our camping neighbors. To kayak, all you need is a permit, coordination with the ferry when you buy your ticket, and wham bam thank you ma'am. If you've got your kayak, you can make an overnight trip to Loggerhead Key. Like kayaking, you'll need a permit to fish on the island. We aren't into fishing, but these super friendly campers we met were really into it. I think they stayed a day longer than us, and they were fishing non-stop and eating fish for dinner every night. Not MREs or ferry sandwiches like us. For your return voyage, you'll need to have your camping gear packed and stowed at the pier by 10:30 a.m. so the ferry staff can load it up. Otherwise, that's Dry Tortugas in a seashell. We'll put links in the description for all the useful information we think will help. Let us know if you've been to Dry Tortugas, or if you have any questions, or if you now want to go because of our video. We loved it, and it was bittersweet leaving, even though we've now been there twice.
Happy anniversary.
We'll see you on the trails or in the water.